Good morning. It seems like every day we're hearing about new tariffs being added, subtracted, multiplied, divided by the United States and our trade partners, from electricity to wine to cars, medicines, all sorts of things. There are a lot of back and forth going on right now between Canada and the U.S., other countries as well, of course. But did you realize that Canada is the #1 export market for Connecticut? That's true. Here to talk about that new trade war and how it's impacting business flowing between Canada and Connecticut is DiPentima, President and CEO of the CBIA. That stands for Connecticut Business and Industry Association. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
This, as many things have been in the news lately, this is something of a moving target. And that, I think, is maybe where I want to start. How difficult is it for you to advise your members on what this means when the tariffs keep changing, when there's reciprocal tariffs, when there's really, like I said, a moving target?
Yeah, it's incredibly challenging. You know, we're there to try to inform and educate our members, comfort them, to create that stability, predictability, calm things down. And when we aren't even that source of information that's a go-to because things are changing so rapidly and we're staying on top of it, that gives, in businesses a lot of angst, and that's not what you want to see. The businesses want predictability, stability, certainty. Where should I make my investments? How much should I invest? Should I grow my workforce? Should I cut back on job growth? Should I grow my investments? And when you don't have that certainty, when you have all this uncertainty, the businesses are really waiting for the dust to settle. And I think that's what you're seeing right now is a bit of a pausing.
And I was on your website preparing for this interview, and I saw guidance from back in November where you guys said, hey, listen, Trump was clear, tariffs are coming, let's start preparing for it. How does it change it, though, when, the tariff on Wednesday might be different from the tariff on Thursday, and then maybe that country is going to give something back to the U.S. on Friday? Is that part of the challenge?
Oh, it's drastically part of the challenge. Yeah, I mean, it drastically changes things. Not only are you now trying to figure out, well, what's the new rules and what is being tariffed and not tariffed, it's also the runway. How much runway do I have? We pause. How long do we pause for? And businesses need runway. They need to be able to plan accordingly. It takes a while to add labor. It takes a while to make investments. It takes a while to get your businesses ready. And if you're reshoring a lot and have to now do more in-house when we already have a labor shortage in the United States and certainly in Connecticut, it's going to be very challenging for them to be able to react that quickly. They cannot react as fast as government is changing things. That causes chaos, and that's what we're seeing in the markets and what we're saying out and play out in businesses overall.
I saw a publication from the Canadian consulate to the U.S. talking about the trade relationship with Connecticut, and they put huge numbers on it: $2.1 billion in exports, $5.9 billion in imports, oil being one of the biggest imports. How does it affect our Connecticut businesses and your members?
Yeah, it's a big piece of the Connecticut economy. Connecticut economy is trade-driven, which means we export a lot, but we also import a lot. And a lot of that's Canada, and a lot of that's Mexico. The aerospace industry specifically is a big piece of the export market. Pratt & Whitney has a facility here in East Hartford and Middletown. They also have a facility over in Canada. And so the Pratt supply chain here in Connecticut makes parts for all of them. And that's a big piece of the export market. It's not only the aerospace industry, but machinery, computers and technology that we are making here in Connecticut, either fully making here or the components. And that's Canada has become a big trade partner with us. It's 5% of our overall economy is actually exported out of Connecticut. And so you're talking $17, $18 billion in total exports. We bring in about $22 billion of imports too, and a lot of that supports our manufacturing sector.
Well, and just as an example, when you were saying Pratt & Whitney, and we had some videos of Sikorsky, I mean, and you can keep ticking them off. There's so many of those industries here who rely on Canada and other countries. But that also means that there's Connecticut workers who are in their jobs because of that trade market, right? So is that part of the concern too? If I ran a big business, that I would obviously be concerned about this, but maybe just the guy who's punching the clock has to worry about it too.
They got to worry about it in a couple of ways. They've got to worry about what their business is going to do, what the industry is going to do. Is the economy going to slow down? Some people are even talking about potential recession at some point in time. But when you pause on investments, when you pause on job growth, the commerce wheels stop, and therefore if you don't see growth, you're going to see potentially layoffs or furloughs. That's one area the workers should definitely be concerned. But the other area is in their pocketbook. When you start to reshore everything, and there's going to be some cost increases. We're already seeing it in the steel and aluminum markets with the tariffs there. That could be on house prices, new home constructions. If you're doing renovations, that could be in your grocery bill, everything. And you even talk about the energy side of it. And Connecticut already has very high energy costs. About 10% of our energy is supported by by Canada. So will we see that in our energy prices too? And that's really going to affect the worker. Cost increases, job security. Those are two things that are really critical.
One of the stated goals of President Trump on the campaign trail, going back more than a year, talking about the need for this, was he wanted to bring these manufacturing jobs back to the United States. And Connecticut, of course, could benefit from that, where a lot of things are assembled but maybe not manufactured here. The question I have is, do we have the workforce to do it? Because we've done so many stories about needing skilled craftsmen and tradesmen and Electric Boat and Sikorsky and Pratt. Do we have the people, if those jobs come back right now, to fill those jobs?
That's one of the biggest things we're hearing from businesses right now. Is like, I can't handle the demand we already have. We got 75,000 job openings. If we had 0% unemployment in Connecticut, we still have 30,000 job openings. We don't have the workforce in the state. And then when you look across the country, we've got millions and millions of job openings in manufacturing across the country. We don't have the workforce. So now you're going to layer on top of that demand and expect the industries to handle that. Now, certain industries, steel and aluminum, have had capacity for a while, so you could see them filling up that additional demand. But aerospace, automotive, machine devices, they don't have that demand. They have open jobs for several years now, and so they're going to have a hard time being able to handle the current demand, let alone the new demand that's layered on top from potentially reshoring of these tariffs. But that's what we're hearing about businesses. That's a big concern of theirs.
So what are you telling those concerned business owners who reach out to you and say, Chris, what should I do? What do you tell them?
Yeah, you got to continue to move forward with your strategy. Granted, it may be at a slower pace than you had planned on a month or two ago while you try to wait for this dust to settle. How much of this is negotiation tactic, real negotiation tactic, and maybe not going to come to fruition? We're already seeing an implementation of pause, and so clearly there's some negotiation going on there, and I think you're seeing some movement in that negotiation process. So there's no reason to stop on your strategy. You got to continue to move forward. Just probably move forward with some caution and possibly slower than normal as we see the dust settle. The other thing that businesses are waiting for is what's going to happen with tariffs, but also what's going to happen on the tax side. And there could be some aggressive tax cuts coming out at the federal level that will reduce the cost of doing business in Connecticut and the United States as a whole, and therefore make them more competitive globally, and they're going to have to then accelerate their business strategy. So we need to see the full package. We probably won't know all the answers until May or June.
Just a minute left, but what do you tell people who maybe aren't one of your members or not a business owner, they're just an average Joe watching our program this Sunday morning? Are there certain things you're going to be watching for, indicators, things that you're going to say, oh, that's bad, this is good? Just as someone who's an expert in this, what's your advice to the average Joe?
Yeah, absolutely. We're watching job numbers very closely. Will the job openings start to go down, but not because they're being filled, because businesses are backing off on their hiring? So I don't think you're going to hear about layoffs necessarily as much as, hey, I'm going to pull off some of the job openings I had. That's what the average Joe should be watching. If our job openings in Connecticut start to go down, but the unemployment rate doesn't necessarily go down, it actually starts to go up, so there's more people out there looking. That's going to be a big thing. Certainly our overall economic output is going to be something we watch on a regular basis. Is our exports to Canada and our imports coming in from both Canada and Mexico, does that start to dwindle down? The effect that was planned originally when this was rolled out in 2018 with the U.S., Canada, Mexico agreement was to move a lot of product from Asia to North America. It's been very successful. We've moved about $1 billion over here, but now we've got to make it sure that we can continue that success that we have with Canada and Mexico.
Well, it is a wild time to be in your chair, I'm sure. Things changing by the moment. We appreciate you being here, giving your perspective, and we'll, of course, have you back. Chris, Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.